Hi, this is January 14th. So I am recording lesson one for the first week of January, which was about an argumentative essay topic. Now, this is pretty new for my semi-private students. I hesitated to do this, but the only reason I did it was because the new STARS test goes over persuasive and argumentative essays. So this was a challenge for week one students. I'm going to go ahead and do it. For those older students who are more than capable of doing it, the younger students will have difficulty with this. Okay, but I chose a wonderful topic and a very controversial topic. You have to have a controversy to have an argument. So our argument today is, are video games good or are they bad? And this is a really fascinating topic. I'm also doing it in my advanced class. And what's fascinating about it was I found more arguments in favor of it. Quantity-wise, there were a lot of arguments promoting kids playing video games. So I was a little bit surprised with that, which I'm guessing some of you are. Boys were certainly excited. Woo, video games are good for me. Okay, so let me explain. Anything can be overused. Anything can be too much. Why do kids play video games? And this was the common response I had when I gave this. They're fun. And there's nothing wrong with having fun in life. You know, I'm sure your phone is fun. I'm sure your computer is fun. But I'm pretty sure also that your parents set limits with your computer and your phone. So when you think about video games, I want to share the screen and just give you an idea because I kind of understand the evolution of them. They've come a long way from when I was your age, everybody. So here is just a really cool video on this.
There was only the Nimbitron. The first video game ever debuted at the New York's World Fair in 1940. A nuclear physicist named Edward Condon presented an electromechanical machine called the Nimbitron, which was designed to play the ancient strategy game of Nim. Unfortunately, the computer was really
video
tough.
game
If you
looks
managed
like
to beat
that
it, the
today.
game would give you a token to let all of your friends know you were a Nim world champion. It wasn't until 1968 that Ralph Baer, now known as the father of video games, developed and released what would eventually become known as the Magnavox Odyssey, the world's first home video game console, which included a simple, silent game based on ping pong called table tennis. Meanwhile, another programmer named Nolan Bushnell saw the Odyssey at a trade show and decided he could do it even better. He co-founded his own company called Atari, threw a hot tub in the middle of the office, and began developing their own games in-house, including a version of Odyssey's table tennis game, which they called Pong.
Pretty boring.
Eventually, Atari built a Pong cabinet, which would allow players to play for a limited amount of time by entering a quarter into the machine, and in the process, ushered in an entirely new industry centered around the video arcade. When other companies caught on to the growing arcade boom, they created even more popular titles like Space Invaders, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, and arcade gaming grew to over $10 billion in revenue in 1982. It wasn't until 1985 that home consoles really took hold in popular culture in North America, originating with Nintendo, a Japanese company, in their release of the Nintendo Entertainment System. The NES was designed with two controllers and the ability to play multiple different titles on a single machine, the most popular of which was Super Mario Bros. In 1989, Nintendo followed up on their success by releasing a handheld system called the Game Boy, which came bundled.
Okay, I think you get the message. They're fun. Okay, so I start with an article, Are Video Games Bad for Me? And this actually came from a kid's article. And I like just how it just kind of begins it. And this is a great idea for a lead, everyone. And everyone is asked this week to try a lead. What is a lead? A hook. Well, why do kids love video games? They're fun, they're entertaining, and I love books for the same reason. There's nothing wrong with entertainment. I love watching movies. But parents might say, enough, find something else to do. And that can be good advice, even if you're about to get to the next level. Why? Too much of anything is just too much. It's true, some studies have shown certain video games can improve hand-eye coordination, you know, the controller. They can improve fine motor skills, problem-solving skills, the mind's ability to process information, spatial awareness. Okay, there is good in them, but too much can cause problems. Too much food can cause problems. Too much exercise can cause problems. Too much time on your phone can cause problems. It's hard to get enough active play and exercise if you're always playing a video game. And without enough exercise, kids can become overweight. And the other argument on the other side is kids who play video games might act more aggressively. And, you know, we talked about that in my class this past week, and the kids were my students were very open about sharing. They didn't want to play the easy games. They didn't want to play kid games. They're attracted to the T and the mature games, which are more violent and of course have more profanity. So the mindset for the other side, the opponent side, those who oppose kids playing video games, is if you're watching or you're playing video games and you're listening to profanity, or you're performing violent action after violent action, this normalizes that behavior. So you don't think anything of using those actions in, say, a school setting. Here's the good news. Playing video games some of the time can be okay if you have quality games, limited screen time, and that's including anything, because you can play a game on your laptop, on your PC. So it could be anything. A good game is the right one that's old enough for you. And great, games are rated now, just like movies are rated. I'm about to sneeze. So this is a controversial topic. And the reason I chose this topic was I was astonished to find how big the video game industry is. So just to give you a comparison, in 2023, movies in the theater sold in the United States alone, $7 billion in profits. You're going, wow. Book sales, that's ebooks and print books combined, was $78 billion. Okay, I'm gonna give you a huge number here. The video game industry, $365 billion in 1 year in 2023. Okay. So they're spitting out video games to younger and younger groups, marketing them as educational. And this is why we're having a controversy about it. It's big business. And they market to especially young adolescent boys games that often objectify the female, objectify women. So let me just tell you, I see the good and I see the bad, and I actually see more of the bad than the good. So when I chose this essay, I was really surprised there was so much good, which was probably good for me. So is playing video games good or bad for you? Let's look at how you perform an argument. So if you scroll down in your packet, you will see there's a page that says, get it, argumentative essays, this one. And you're going to see the words ethos, pathos, and logos. Very, very important here. The best way to prove an argument is to think like a lawyer. In the United States of America, we have the right, well, you're considered innocent until proven guilty of a crime. If you're a citizen of the United States, you have the right to due process. You have the right to a fair trial. And a jury of 12 members of your peers will decide your fate if you're guilty or innocent. So when you think about, and I'm looking at, I took a picture of my board from yesterday. I want to make sure I remembered everything from what I took in class. If you're thinking like an attorney, you're going to use Aristotle's 3 persuasive appeals. And they're very, very logical. A lot of times the wording is really hard to understand what that means. So Aristotle was a famous Greek philosopher who taught under Plato. And he was considered one of the greatest philosophers of all time. And he believed there were 3 main argumentative appeals that if you use them, you can convince someone to agree with you. And I'm all about that, right? The first one is pathos that I'm going to go over. This is usually the hardest one. And I think kids are really good at it. I think you're really good at convincing your parents to do what you want them to do. For example, my daughter, when she was in 8th grade, gave me the argument, Mom, I need a new Mac laptop and I would like a MacBook. And I'm like, okay, you don't need at the time, $1,100 MacBook. What's wrong with a cheaper version? And she sold me, listen, I want a top quality laptop that will work with me my whole 4 years of high school. High school counts, I can be more organized. I have, I can take it with me. It's pretty light and portable. I'll, um, it'll help me keep up with my grades. And of course, she appealed to my emotion, which is what pathos is. It's an emotional appeal. And it's a clever and manipulative way to get someone to do what you want them to do. Now, kids are wonderful at convincing mom and dad to buy them a specific technology, like my daughter, because she appealed to my values and beliefs. I'm a school teacher. I'm a mom. I wanted her to be successful and have good grades. So, wow. Woo, right? A kid might appeal to their mom for a phone. Mom, safety. You can know where I'm at all times. You can track me. I can contact you and you can contact me. And let's be real. A kid doesn't want it for that reason, but that's how you're going to sell it. So an appeal to emotion, whew, sure does work. In a court of law, an appeal to emotion can convince the jury to side with the victim and really be against the accused. Or, if you're a really good prosecutor or a really good defense attorney, you can have them sympathize with the accused and maybe believe they're innocent. So it's really in the hands of the prosecution, which usually works for the government, and the defense counsel. So the other thing that works in a court of law is ethos, and that's just a fancy word for expert opinions. They add believability because they are knowledgeable and wise about a specific subject. Their persuasion is through their expertise, ethos, expertise. So for an example, let's say it's a murder trial. Ooh, right? A forensic pathologist might be a witness on the stand who says, well, the DNA was on the victim and the accused. I can tell by, the gunpowder on the hand of the accused that he shot the gun. The ballistics of the gun match the bullet that's in the victim's body. Okay, so that's kind of undeniable evidence. Okay, and that's something else. We'll do that in a second. But because it comes from a forensic pathologist whose job is to study corpses to determine cause of death and to determine foul play, you're going to believe that witness. Now, the other side of that is logos, and that's also what I gave you there, which was factual information. DNA in a crime scene, it's irrefutable proof. If you're on a video camera, irrefutable proof that you were there. If your fingerprints are on the gun and that is your gun registered to your name, that's proof. So facts or statistics are undeniable, which means, there's no way the jury can't believe that because it's proof. Okay, so logos is logical proof. Ethos, it means that has to come from a credible expert. And then pathos is just an emotional appeal. Okay, so in a court of law, let's pretend we're in a court of law here. How are we going to argue for or against video games? Okay, so I want you to go to page 2. Is playing video games good or bad for you? And I'm going to explain to you right away. Articles usually kind of lead in. Video games are frowned upon by parents as time wasters, and worse, some education experts think that these games corrupt the brain. Woo! Okay, that's a pretty negative slant, right? Violent video games are easily blamed by the media and some experts as the reason why some young people become violent or commit extreme antisocial behavior. Okay, first of all, let me just say some people are violent and antisocial for other reasons than playing video games. So that's not necessarily a cause and effect relationship. Many scientists and psychologists find that video games can actually be beneficial. The main one is making kids smart. So really interesting here. It kind of showed you both sides in the lead, and you will do the same. You're going to say, what are the main arguments for both sides? Okay. And I would also lead with, why do kids play them in the first place? And let's be honest, they've come a long way from that video I showed you. Today, they are interactive, they're immersive, they're vibrant colors, high definition, multi-dimensional, layered with storytelling. The characters are rich. And I had, Pac-Man. That's it. Or Pong, which was table tennis with a little ball and two horizontal bars. Okay, so here's your first ethos. Video games may actually teach kids high-level thinking skills they will need in the future. This is according to C. Sean Green, who's a psychologist at the University of Wisconsin. So notice I gave his name, his credibility. It's not Mrs. Hensel telling you this, right? And a psychologist studies human behavior. Video games, he says, may actually teach kids high-level thinking skills that they might need in the future. So he's going to support that and back it up. Playing video games changes the brain's physical structure in the same way as when you learn to read, play the piano, or navigate using a map. And I know your parents don't mind you reading books, but this is basically saying you're learning in the same way. And by the way, he explains that even further, explaining it's exercising your mind in it because you're concentrating and you're strengthening the neural circuits that can build your brain. Okay, so you'll notice here it says positive effects of video games. There are 33. There are 33 positive effects of video games. So obviously not all of them are the best. The first one, following instructions, problem solving, and logic. When kids play games such as The Incredible Machine, Angry Birds, or Cut the Rope, they train their brain to come up with creative ways to solve puzzles and other problems in short bursts. There's not a lot there. The next one's a good one. There's a lot there. Hand-eye coordination, fine motor skills, spatial skills. This is a fantastic argument, and you can see it has this much. In shooting games, the character may be running and shooting at the same time. This requires the real-world player to keep track of the position of the character, where he or she's having their speed, where the gun is aiming, if the gunfire is hitting the enemy, and so on. And you have to do this with a controller, which means you have to have fine motor skills and keep track spatially of what's going on in the game. And there's a lot of things happening at once. And all these factors, the player has to coordinate, and the brain's interpretation and reaction with movement in their hands and fingertips. This requires hand-eye coordination, visual spatial ability, and that's an acquired skill. And I can tell you, I'm not good at it. Probably why I don't like video games, and maybe that's just me. There have even been studies with adults showing that experience with video game is related to better surgical skills. A reason given by experts as to why fighter pilots today are more skillful than generations of pilots in the past, because it's like a simulator. It's like a flight simulator. There was even an argument, soldiers today, even though Call of Duty gets a bad rap, and other games that simulate war, they're actually using them in the military, these games, to teach strategy. Sports games. Oh my gosh. So my students last week, I asked, how many of you have played a video game, let's say basketball or soccer or football, and actually learned a strategy to use on the actual football field? And I had a student say, oh my gosh, me. He goes, I'm a little guy. And in football, if there's my opponent is like, a foot taller than me, okay, I don't really have, he has an advantage over me. So in, I forget what football game he told me, he said, it told me to cut him at the knees, go lower, because I'm lower to the ground, I'm lower. And that's, I can, it's physics. I can, make him fall over. Whereas physically he's bigger than me and heavier than me. Physics wise, he can pummel me, but there's a way to, and he said that was in a video game while I learned that. So, okay, I kind of think I've already showed you it's not all bad, right? So what I want you to do when we get to the essay part is I want you to choose the best three and support them. Okay, so you'll notice the negative effects of video games. And yes, you have to flip a few pages. There's only 8. So 33 to choose from versus 8. Now, don't underestimate the power of quality over quantity. The quality of the arguments for the negative effects of video games are pretty good. Okay, so I want you to go to your outline, and this is where it's going to get tricky. And I want to make sure that I am modeling for you how to do this. It will be hard. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here because I want to make sure everyone's kind of following me on this one. So let me go here and I'm going to scroll down. So you'll see this is the article. And you'll see all these bullet points for positive, and I'm on page 5 here, are 33 points. The negative points are 8 points. Now you'll notice also that I've highlighted, or if I put in red ink, that means they're really good. You might want to use those. So not only have I given you the articles, I've color coded it to show you what are the best ones, which is pretty nice of me. You have to admit, yes. Okay, so we're going to go to the outline here. Again, right here, if you'll notice, use MLA format. That's Times New Roman, 12-point font. Don't use more than 12. Times New Roman is a little bit smaller than Arial, so you can get more on a page. Your name and date, that's first and last name, should be in the left-hand corner. Skip a line, center a creative title. I don't want video games in the title. I don't want bad or good in the title because you're going to talk about both. So make sure it's a creative title. So surprising arguments or surprising claims might be a really good title here. And then you indent to start the first paragraph. Now, this is going to be a slow process because this is really difficult. I'm going to assign the first half. And if you've never done a lead before, great. This is your chance. A lead is a hook. Kids give astonishingly reasonable reasons for why they enjoy playing video games. The number one reason is, of course, to have fun. Other kids say it's exciting and challenging to try to figure out how to defeat a game. Statistics show about 49% of boys and 29% of girls admit they play video games to relax, relieve stress, that's a typo, or release anger in a safe space at home. So what's the controversy about? Okay, here's what you have to do in the lead. So you'll notice I've put them in pink and purple. You have to put two sides of the argument. So those who support kids playing games in moderation suggest there are positive benefits with improving specific skills as well as critical thinking. That's their side. Unfortunately, there are negative effects associated with playing video games, especially if a child is not monitored or plays excessively. So in an argumentative essay, you're going to put both sides in the thesis. The bottom line is when kids play video games, both sides of the argument have valid points. Those who argue in favor of kids playing them say there typos here today. There is educational value in them, while those who oppose them claim they can inflict harm. Those of you who you can obviously copy the thesis word for word. Okay, so body one, this is what you're going to do. 3 strong claims explain the positive benefits of kids playing video games. Choose the first strongest argument here, and I would suggest you use ethos. Well, if you scroll back up to the second page, this is your ethos right here. So I've given you number 1. Oh, I'm so nice. Now, you want to give C. Sean Green, you want to give his credibility. He's a psychologist where? At the University of Wisconsin. You do want to quote him and then summarize what it means. Okay. So you're going to use an ethos example. Number 2 on your outline. Choose the second best reason, but this time give logos. Anything that's been proven, right? A study that's proven. And then the third reason here could be a reasonable and effective way to convince a parent using pathos. What would convince your parents to make them look at playing video games differently? What would convince them? That would go really well here. Make sure you're supporting each claim. All in all, video games have been shown to have educational value when games are chosen carefully and played in moderation. Okay, so students, are going to stop here. This is your stop sign, everybody. Okay, so just so you know, this is your stop sign. Okay, you're not responsible for anything down here because I'm going to model it for you. Here we go. Here's an example of the second body paragraph. So you don't have to prove the negative side. I'm going to prove it for you. How nice of me. And in doing so, I'm going to show you how to use ethos, how to use logos, and how to use pathos. Okay, so when kids play video games, there can be negative or harmful effects. One of the strongest arguments explaining why video games are a bad influence on kids is how they affect school behaviors and performance. When kids play video games, they often neglect finishing their homework or studying for a test because they're too busy playing video games. A psychology study done by Argosy University in Minnesota found, so notice I named it, those kids who become addicted to playing video games and cannot stop, argue a lot with their teachers, fight a lot with their friends, and score lower grades than others who play video games less often. Kids even play games late at night, which impacts their sleep, causing poor attention at school. Hard to argue against that. A second argument comes from doctors who have found a direct link to kids who play video games and poor health. Facts, so this is an important word we're here, facts show kids who play video games are more sedentary, not getting enough exercise, so they often become obese or overweight. Staring at a screen too long can also cause video-induced seizures. I didn't say vision problems. You can get vision problems doing this on the computer, reading on my ebook, looking at my phone. Video-induced seizures, you only get through video games. Additionally, when the body is stuck, because you're sitting here like this in one position, muscular and skeletal problems result. There are people even saying just this from our phone, our necks, our heads kind of bow down. These physical ailments happen only in kids who play excessive time on video games. A third argument parents must consider, and this is the pathos, if they allow their kids to play video games, they may be exposed to violence and foul language. Not that you don't hear it at school, and not that the world isn't a violent place and you can't see that on the internet, but many experts believe young people who play video games become more violent in their behavior towards others and are more likely to repeat profanity as they view it as normal behavior they witness while playing a game. So parents should be aware of one of the first school shootings in Connecticut, and this was Sandy Hook Elementary, who found the shooters to be addicted gamers. Okay, and these are elementary kids. This was an elementary. I don't know that a 11-year-old, a 10, 11-year-old should be playing Call of Duty, and that's what they were playing excessively, really without a lot of parental supervision. Now, obviously, this is the worst case scenario. And maybe, there was more to the story here. We don't know. But the fact is, there has been a lot of hype about the subject matter in games. Unfortunately, all video games are not alike, and some have questionable content, which can lead gamers to play excessively, causing them harm. So when you look at the arguments against video games, for the most part, it's for kids who play them 8 or more hours a day, which that's absurd, right? Think about what you're not getting done. You're not, doing your homework. You're not playing with friends. You're not playing sports. Of course, that has to be mentally and physically harmful to you. So, and I think that's true for anything in excess. Okay, so just a reminder, I'm only assigning partial essay. If you are new and you have only been doing one paragraph, I encourage you to try the lead. Use mine as a guide. If you've never done it before, what have you got to lose, right? And then today is Sunday, January 14th, when I'm recording this. If you are off this weekend and it's a cold weekend here, and you have Monday off for Martin Luther King Jr., and you don't have your short story done, you still have time. January 19th at midnight on Friday is the deadline. Just really quickly, every story has to have a problem. In my class, the assignment is a page and a half minimum. If it's not a page and a half minimum, you didn't do your job. Please don't send me your stories until Friday is over. The deadline is passed, and it will take me a while to get through them. I'm really not going to grade them too harshly, just more of, just some comments. I'll look at punctuation, make sure if you don't know how to punctuate, go look in an other story that a story that we've done. You'll notice it's left margin line it. You only, you don't have to indent like a paragraph. This is not an essay, it's a story. You will skip a line every time a new person is speaking or every time there's a change in scene. I've also given you the link, and I'm going to send that out today for anybody who has any more questions. But at this point, I can't do anything but, just remind you they're due in 5 days. All right. Thanks for watching. If you can submit as soon as you can, that would be great. And I will do my best to get edits back to you as soon as possible. Thanks and have a great day.